Dan, why don't we start with you, since you're both the writer and the director? Talk a little bit about the writing process for the film, where the idea came from, and sort of set up the premise for us.
Sure. So the premise is basically there's a young man who's just been robbed. Who's a, you know, anyways, he's a criminal who just got robbed, and he shows up in a convenience store afterwards, and right behind him, an older, wealthier man wins the lottery. He's very vocal about it, which isn't a great idea. And sort of in his sort of desperate space, he decides to take the ticket from him and walk out of there. And then basically, things spiral out of control from there. There's a cop in the back who was in the bathroom, and it just sort of one thing leads to the next, and he sort of ends up with this ticket and sort of conspires with Jessica's character and a couple other people who were in the store at the same time, the hostages, to sort of put together a story so that maybe he can get away with the money, but also maybe everyone else can too.
Got it.
And
Jessica.
then from the idea standpoint, go Jessica. I'm gonna hand it over.
Jessica, talk a little bit about your character and sort of the moral dilemma she's facing.
Sure. Anna Marlene is a very pregnant woman in a convenience store. She's a waitress. She's there with her partner, her baby daddy, who is a piano player, and we're, it's Christmas Eve, and I'm craving some ice cream, and we go to this convenience store, and it turns out we have a chance to change our entire lives. And I think people will perceive Anna Marlene they'll come in with their preconceived notions of how she looks or how she appears to be acting, and be really surprised with how she evolves when she's faced in a life or death situation. She's full of fight, full of will, full of depth, all in a little pink waitress suit.
So, I mean, I think it's an interesting premise, and for both of you, talk a little bit about kind of the moral dimensions of these people who are in this situation, and suddenly it turns where maybe they can profit from it. What do you think's going through the different characters' heads in this situation?
I can go. You go, Jessica. I'd love to.
No, please, you go. I can only speak for my character.
I think for the hostages in the store, I think at first it's definitely like just to get out of there, I think, is why they're more willing to go along. But then I wanted to kind of have that thing, like once you kind of set your mind to something like this and you kind of start, I think, imagining what that life looks like, because you kind of can't help it. I think then they all get more invested than they were expecting to be in coming out on top or walking away with the money. So like, and that's sort of like just that slope of, okay, I do believe these characters mostly are all they're just doing it because they want to, like, all right, let's get out of here. How do we stay alive? And then at some point, like, like a dog with a bone, I think they've just sort of decided this is going to be something that's theirs. And they've done something now to deserve it. And that's sort of kind of what happens for everybody. And they all have their different reasons, but all of them, I think, are good. People do bad things for good reasons all the time.
Jessica?
Yeah, I guess to add on to that is at some point in the film, without getting into spoilers, at some point in the film, a decision is almost made for some of these characters. Like, they've gone too far, they have to commit. You have to go all the way, so it's all the how these characters walk into that convenience store versus how they may walk out is dependent upon all of these different factors and circumstances and other people that either influence them or force them to like, show their hand or do what they need to do to make it out of that convenience store.
Yeah. So obviously, sadly, it was Angus Cloud's last film. Why don't you both share a memory of working with him on the project that you'll take away as a memory in your mind?
I mean, I think my first one is honestly just the first kind of conversation I had with him, mostly because it was just felt like so surreal that I'd written the script and then just, in the way, and I shared the script with my wife and she had really liked it. And then at some point I was out of town and she had watched Euphoria like on a binge. And when I came back, she's like, I know who should be in your movie, Angus Cloud. I was like, I don't know who that is. And I watched the show and I watched him and I was like, he's great. But also like this was fantasy. I wasn't gonna make the movie. At the time I was just, doing commercials. And then long story, basically when I decided to make this movie and we went out to kind of look for actors who would be interested and his name came back as a possibility and that he was interested in the script, it was like too surreal of like one of those, I can't believe this and this is going to happen. So it was just sort of this crazy moment and then sitting down and talking to him and, just sort of hearing his life story and seeing things that we had in common. And it was just a great conversation about like, I hadn't seen season 2 yet. So it was definitely like a little bit like he and I both kind of took a chance on each other. Like I hadn't seen, like basically he is, this is his movie for a good portion of it. So I was just sort of, he was like, we were both just on board to kind of jump into it together. And that was really special. So for me, that's like the first thing that comes to mind is just sort of having a conversation with him, seeing what a normal, kind, interesting, and the things he wanted to experience had nothing to do with success that he was finding. Like we talked about that he had always wanted to ride rails. So he did, like, it was one of the things he jumped on a train and rode it down the coast. And I was like, that's incredible. That's what you've been wanting to do. And then that you went and did it. So he just sort of had that kind of adventurous spirit and wanted to go experience those things. And he wasn't interested in really almost anything that fame or the trappings of fame that anyone else would have. I think it was, we've been asked several times, like, what would you do if you won the lottery? And I feel like Angus would just have done whatever the random thing that he wanted to do was. And it wasn't, I don't think any of it had to do with money. He was just sort of interested in life in a certain way and like hanging out with his friends and being just who he was.
Jessica? I would say like, I feel like he would probably give each of his friends like, there's 10 million for you, 10 million for you. Like, now let's go have some fucking fun with it. Like that's, I don't know. So I that's what I'm imagining if that were to happen. Yeah, it's funny. One of the things that sticks out to me the most, and like one of the first things I thought about when I had heard the horrible news, which is that we had filmed this, we had wrapped this film just a few days before Christmas. It was right in December. And I remember waking up on Christmas morning and I had a DM from him and it was just like, Merry Christmas, player. And there was like a little picture that was like of like a little Christmas picture. And I don't know, I thought that was so special because we had did this really intense project together, but didn't get to know each other on this deep, intimate level. It's 16 days of just work. And like, maybe we get to know each other like a little bit here and there. And so for him to think of me on his Christmas morning, you know what I mean? And he was always, he was always like that for, you would get texts here and there, like, how you doing? Thinking of you, hope it's good. If you post something on your story, he'd respond and be like, wishing you well. And I don't know, I always think of his Merry Christmas text for some reason when people ask me about moments, because it just was so sweet.
Yeah. So finally, what do you hope the audience takes away from the film?
I don't know. I feel like that's sort of up to them. I hope from like just an entertainment standpoint, I hope that like people enjoy the movie. I hope it's a good watch and that it's exciting and that it has ideas on its mind. But hopefully, like, I do think it's entertainment first. So hopefully it's just like, oh, that was a fun movie. Oh, and this other thing was in there. And that was an interesting way to kind of talk about some of these things. Hopefully that's what comes across.
Jessica?
Yeah, I think what Dan said, a movie going is such a personal experience. So I wouldn't want to influence anyone's movie going experience with the hope of what they take away. But I hope they take away, I guess, like I hope they remember it, that they enjoyed it, that they tell their friends about it, or that they, that it's that they had fun, and that that it impacted them, or even if just like at the bare minimum it was just something that they enjoyed to do on their Friday or Saturday, Sunday night, then that's a win to me, and I think to all of us.
Thanks for watching the You Interview channel. With over 3,000 original celebrity videos, we have one of the largest collections of celebrity interviews anywhere. So remember to like and comment on our videos and subscribe to the channel. If you want to get more involved, you can become a member of the channel. Membership has its perks. You can see exclusive celebrity videos and get the opportunity to ask our celebrity guests questions. We can't wait to hear from you.